Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with a bad case of Banlist blues. What's Banlist blues, you may ask? Put simply, it's that kind of sad, empty feeling you get when you just don't know what deck you want to play after a forbidden and limited list snipes your favorite deck. Or 5 of them in this case. The newest January FNL list had a massive number of changes. 9 bans, 10 limits, 3 semi-limits, and an additional 10 new unlimits, which totals to a whopping 32 changes. Some of these changes feel like they're long overdue, such as the final nail in the coffin for Sky Strikers and Thunder Dragons, or the return of Tribe-infecting Virus and freaking Book of Moon. And some of the changes seem completely out of left field. I mean, Morphing Jar number 2? Do you actually want my brother to conjure up an empty jar deck in 2020, Konami? All jokes aside, the list did a fine job overall in shaking up a format whose top contenders had largely been the same for nearly 2 full years. It also seems to be preparing for the impending Master Rule 5, Master Rule 4.5, Master Rule 3.5, whatever the Starlight Rare format's called, it's going to be big. A lot of players, myself included, have played the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game since its inception in 2002. That's nearly 2 decades of children's trading card games, and with it came what's going on 7 iterations and focal game mechanics in its various generations. While each person is different, I think it's safe to say that the vast majority of the long-standing fanbase enjoyed something about each of those eras of the game. Whether it was getting your game on with the Elemental Heroes, revving it up with Team 5Ds, or making your opponent cry with Pendulum FTK, something had to appeal to the fans to ensure its long-term success, as well as to encourage our personal continued investment into the franchise. The Link era was a hard pill I ultimately swallowed with that same mindset. I was excited about a new Yu-Gi-Oh! Weirdly different, but new Yu-Gi-Oh! But it was a really bittersweet experience that came at the cost of the other extra deck mechanics my friends and I loved so much. So much, in fact, that that's ultimately what drove buddies like the Silver Shadow 18, a friend I had started Yu-Gi tubing with, to permanently purchase Blackwings. The upcoming rule changes are looking to be a renaissance for Yu-Gi-Oh! One that takes us back to a time where Link monsters are truly an addition to the game, and not a force-fed fence between our hearts and our favorite cards. That's exactly why it's so hard for me to keep making Let's Build deck profiles this format. I'm currently playing around with some classic retro-themed decks from as early as the Duel Monsters era, but it's too hard to justify spending that much time on what feels like a temporary format that'll cease to exist in just 2 short months. Perhaps it would be different if I played regularly on a competitive level, or maybe this would be the time I would take a break anyway. Regardless, I don't want to churn out videos just for the sake of it, and that's the fundamental reason for the recent lack of content. Outside of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's been other reasons I haven't been posting as much. I mentioned before that I became a pharmacy manager last fall. I love what I do for my job, but sometimes it takes up all the time I have. There was a particularly busy spell in October that was so insane, we were days behind at times, and I made the personal choice to grab a hotel after working an extra 4 hours the weekend prior just to try and catch up. And it didn't even work. I've always been one to have enough in me where I just needed to put my mind to something in order to accomplish what felt impossible. But in this case, even with a tight-knit team all giving 150%, it just wasn't happening. While we've since recovered from what ended up being an insufficient hours allowance to reasonably do said work, it took a mental toll. Nothing too serious, but it was definitely much more difficult to find the motivation to exert myself when I already felt I had recently overextended. Then in November, Pokemon Sword and Shield dropped, and oh my god, I have been playing Sword non-stop since I picked it up late that month. While the basic story and mechanics aren't anything different from your usual Pokemon game, I was just enamored by the true jump to a 3D Pokemon world. Sure, there's a long way the series could go to catch up to the current and upcoming games in the genre, but it just felt like another childhood dream was finally being realized. Early in my playthrough, I randomly encountered a shiny Dynamaxed Esper, which really got me hooked. For those of you who've never wanted to be the very best, shiny Pokémon are alternate color variants of the creatures that spawn extremely rarely, and for the most part, completely at random. The odds have recently improved in the last few years, but there's still a 1 in 4,096 chance that any Pokémon will appear in its Alter Art form. When I met Seto Kaiba here, I just felt this inexplicable urge to one-up that smug look. And what better way than with something in-game currency can't buy? I joked I would be the better bead by obtaining a shiny Hatena in my very first shiny hunt. It was rough. Among other things, I count pills every day for a living. I've actually folded 1,000 paper cranes a couple years ago. But none of that compared to the 3,637 encounters I needed before I finally hatched my wee witch. In many ways, shiny hunting in Pokemon is like opening a box of chocolatey booster packs. You never know what you're gonna get. If you're lucky enough to snag that grail you've been dreaming of, that suddenly becomes a reality you can hold on to forever. And with Pokemon, it's free. As long as you can put in the time and energy, the shiny might be just one encounter away. This was the preferred pastime for my exhausted mind. Sure, I wasn't exactly being lazy with it. I was always jogging or walking while playing, and would even watch YouTube videos in the background while I hunted. My definition of being a couch potato is not being on the couch, not eating potatoes, and just not making YouTube videos. If I honestly ask myself, I don't think I would have had the inspiration to make any masterpiece of a video anyway given the Banlist blues. And I don't feel that I wasted time assembling an all-shiny team that's only going to grow. In my time away from the channel, I've grown to love Pokemon again more than I ever have. And my love for Yu-Gi-Oh! Hasn't gone away, I just can't wait for April. So that's what I've been up to these last few months. I don't always get to talk about life beyond JDGaming here, but I hope you guys found it at least amusing. It was refreshing to do some personal reflecting and create something different from my usual uploads. With all that happened and how distant I started feeling with the channel, I considered the possibility of formally ending it. No specific rhyme or reason, just a natural point to move on without any regrets. So what's actually going to happen to the channel? It all depends on what I feel like, but one thing's for certain, I'm not out just yet. Again, there are some decks that are largely unaffected by the upcoming Master Rule edit that I'm currently playing around with, so there's still a chance I may upload one of those in the coming months. I've also had an itch to do more editing on my videos, so restarting one of my non-Let's Build video series is a strong possibility. If there's one in particular you feel strongly about, I'm all ears. And it goes without saying, but once the new format begins, I know I'll be raring to go with some newly reinvented decks. And that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. This is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.